and thank you for joining me today at Deanna's studio. Today, thank you for joining me for the book club, where we are discussing highlighted texts of the book IBM and the Holocaust, and the author is Edwin Black. I'm going to be sharing a few pages within the book. What I'm going to be doing today, I wanted to kind of just mention that with a lot of the technology that we have out right now, with the artificial intelligence and all the technology that we have that the technocrats are introducing to our society right now, a lot of what they share are things that they discuss how the products are used and how they can, in their view, in their estimation, enhance things within our society. In their view, that doesn't mean that it's what we all agree to, but within their estimation, within their view, they are. The claim is that it's going to enhance systems. It's going to enhance, even their claim is health, better health, efficiency within our society. And so we hear a lot about these types of issues, or we've been introduced to this type of rhetoric. But what I'm going to be sharing, I kind of wanted to make mention that as I am sharing this book, I am going to be discussing things related to that whole arena of the technocratic. I refer to it as the technocratic fantasy. I was about ready to say it. I refer to it as the technocratic fantasy, but because I look at it as they have these science fiction fantasies that they are creating, they're trying to create, and then they're trying to implement them in, within our society. They're trying to get all of us to embrace, what they have created. So I call it this fantasy, a technocratic fantasy. And what I wanted to mention is that I'm not going to be discussing, so much about how these things operate, and as they do, but some of the things that I wanted to point out regarding all of that, and even what some of the things that I have found, within this book that seem to be very similar to what we see going on with all the technology, the emerging technologies, the AI, the Palantir, the robotics, even like the transhumanism. What I'm going to be discussing are potential reasons behind them wanting to implement certain things, such as what I've just mentioned, all those different arenas of technology, of the technocratic, their desire or their plans of the technocrats. I'm going to be sharing kind of like what I see like reasoning behind their desire to implement them, or how it's going to affect us personally as the human race, and in regards to our Constitution as well, how it is going to affect our constitutional rights and things like that. So I'm not going to be talking so much about how these things work, and I might at times discuss certain little pieces, but I'm going to be discussing primarily kind of like issues behind us implementing those things, or even reasons why I believe they want to implement those things within our society. So I'm going to be discussing topics like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be reading out of the book IBM and the Holocaust, but there's a few other books that I have purchased, just for research purposes, and they tie into this whole field. So I was kind of looking through them, and I actually found some really good pieces of information that I feel complement what I'm going to be reading today. So I am going to be reading a piece from, it's author Patrick M. Wood. It's called The Evil Twins of Technocracy and Transhumanism. It's this book here. I'm also going to be reading a little segment out of Joe Allen's Dark Aeon book. I'm going to be reading some information that I was able to glean from their books as well, that I believe it really does kind of complement some points that I'd like to make regarding what I'm going to read for today. And I'm going to also share a little bit of scripture, at the end. So where I'm starting from today it's page, let me see here. It's something. It's from chapter 1, and I'm going to be reading a few pages, and then I'm going to also start into chapter 2. I'm going to read just a little bit. I'm not, like I said, like I've shared in the past, I'm not going to be reading page, going through page after page. I'm going to be sharing pieces of information that I kind of highlighted, and things that I feel were that they will shed some light on some of the things that we're dealing with within our society right now related to all of this. So things like how they tie into what we see going on or what we've seen in the past, things that we need to be warned of. And from what we're seeing right now, many people are not buying into the whole idea of all of this that the technocrats are wanting to bring about within our society. A lot of people are not. They're not on board with it. As people find out more and more, and they become more and more educated on how these things operate and what the end result will be after if we choose to fully implement some of the technologies, then a lot of people are kind of wanting to put the brakes on the push that we currently see that's being pushed forth at an accelerated rate right now. So and that's the whole reason why I wanted to share this book, is because I feel like we need to be educated on things that happened in the past and how there are similarities with what is stated in this book during the Holocaust, what led to the Holocaust, what led to the success of the Holocaust, actually, specifically. And I can actually see a whole lot of patterns regarding the artificial intelligence, the Palantir, that whole technocratic realm that were taking place during the Holocaust with the company IBM. So that's the whole reason why I'm sharing this, because I feel like we need to gain more knowledge about what we're actually, what we're being confronted with right now. And then as we educate ourselves and we look at some of these things at different angles, then it helps us to be able to make a better decision, a more solid decision on, do we want to utilize this only in, because I personally think a good idea would be for our military, maybe our Department of Defense, to be the ones that actually do utilize something like, if it has to be done. I personally would like to chuck the whole thing. That's my opinion. I don't believe in it. I don't think we need it. I think that we are just fine with the technologies that we have right now. In fact, we have too much, I believe. But I just feel like if we have to go down this road, then why not leave it in the hands of the military, or the Department of Defense, or in our government, but not usher it in to the degree that the technocrats want to usher it in. Put the brakes on it, set some really strong boundaries, really strong parameters around the use of artificial intelligence and the implementation of artificial intelligence within our society, because it's very dangerous. The more we find out about it, we find out that that there's I believe they said chatbots, that they were preying on the children. They've become like predators, predatorial regarding the children, and some of them committing suicide, the children committing suicide, or young teenagers maybe, committing suicide because of all this technology that has told them, and I believe it's the chatbots, to commit suicide. Or they develop these relationships with them, and they're actually they have become like predators to try to destroy human beings, human lives, innocent lives. When it's affecting the children and even teenagers and things like that, then they're stripping away from innocent lives. They haven't even had a chance to do anything in life at that stage. So they've been cheated, and their parents too have been cheated out of life. So I'm going to go ahead and read a few pages or partial pages in chapter 1. Where I'm going to be starting it's page 20. And then I'm going to jump over to page 21. I'm going to read, towards the bottom of 21, not the entire page. And then I'll jump over to the 22. And then I'll start the new chapter 2. Okay, it says, a single tall, sooty smokestack rose several meters into the air. A handmade metal stretcher of sorts used a slide emancipated corpses into the flames. And it's talking about these concentration camps, the crematoriums. It says, used a slide emancipated corpses into the flames, was always nearby. Here was the crematorium, not hidden out of sight, nor obscured by structures or beams or crematorium, was close enough to burn the eyes of any SS guard stationed in the watchtower. The ominous structure and its message were visible to all as the final way station should fate falter or deliver. Situated between two rivers and the towns Bergen and Belsen, the site was originally established in spring 1943 as a prisoner camp for 10,000 Jews who might be ransom or traded. But in the last months of 1944 and early 1945, the Nazi death camps, including Auschwitz, were liberated by Allies. Belsen became a nightmare of human consolidation, receiving transports from other sites. By spring 1945, more than 40,000 were imprisoned under indescribable conditions, starved, worked to death, and randomly tortured. The death toll rose nearly 20,000 just for the month of March 1945. After liberation, horrified British medical teams were unable to save 14,000 dying souls. Eventually, bulldozers were deployed to gruesomely shovel bodies into trenches of twisted rigor mortis. Just meters from the Belsen crematorium, off to the left, near the kitchens and the cisterns, down a muddy path stood the block leader's house. Inmates sometimes called this place the Lion's Den. Within the Lion's Den was a room for the Arbeitsdienstführer, the labor service leader. That's called the labor service. That's referred to as the labor service leader. That is where the Hollerith punch cards were processed. At first glance, they seemed like simple rectangular cards, 5 1/4 inches long there and 3/4 inches tall, divided into two numbered columns with holes punched in various rows, but they were much more than simple cards. Beginning in December 1944, a Dutch Jew, Rudolf Keim, I believe it is pronounced, it's Cheim, I believe it's pronounced Keim, was assigned to work in a labor service office. Hungry and desperate to stay warm, Keim tried every cold morning to locate a bit of extra food, some matches to make a fire. Kindling was stacked in the office, but no matches. For those, Keim needed to venture into the other room where the SS officers slouched on chairs. Invariably, they viciously punched him in the face as the price for walking near to obtain a match. Okay, so they, in order to go get a match so that he could, start a fire to stay warm, he had, as he made his way in to get a match, they punched him in the face, and they just said that was the price he had to pay for getting a match. Okay, but it was worth it for Kim. He could survive, it says. Okay, now I'm going to jump over to the next page. It's about kind of towards the bottom of page 21. The numbered men and women were compared to a list of work needs at Bergen-Belsen and other camps. Never a name, Kim remembers, only the assigned number. So these people, and I mentioned this in the previous recording, the people these poor victims, they did not go by their names, they just gave them numbers. Never a name, Kim remembers, only assigned numbers. How many died was just a statistic to note, a detail for the machines to digest. So it was just part of their they made it part of their statistics. They took note of the ones that died, and then they would input the information in their machines, in the Hollow Earth machines. Okay. Then the dials were adjusted to isolate certain professions, labor skills, age groups, or language abilities needed for work battalions. If prisoners were selected for work, their names appeared on a Hollerith printout for transport to nearby subcamps, factories, and even local farms. Labor requirements were reported, then matched by Office D2 of the SS Economics Office, which administered all the camps under General Oswald Poe. Poe, creator of the Extermination by Labor program. So Oswald Poe was the creator of the Extermination by Labor program. Ardently argued that expeditiously gassing Jews deprived the Reich of an important resource. His idea, extermination by labor, quite simply meant working Jews to death. Only after outliving their usefulness would they be deported to death camps for gassing. So that's pretty sad when they just look at them kind of like animals, really. They treated them like they're not human beings. They treated them like they were animals. And they, just like complete slaves, who they needed to utilize them only to work them to death, utilize them to do the work that needed to be done. And that would be the death of them, because they were not fed well either. They were just working and being abused. And so when you're working hard, I'm sure the work was probably very physically taxing and difficult as well physically. Okay, now I'm going to go down to the end of the page, page 22. And it says, indeed, the systems were not only used it's talking about the Hollerith punch card systems. Indeed, the systems were not only used in the concentration camps, but hundreds of them had been installed for years throughout the entire commercial, industrial, war-making, and anti-Jewish infrastructure of Nazi Germany and Nazi-dominated Europe. On this cold December day, Watson was unyielding. His German subsidiary, DHMOG, was out of control. More lawyers would be called, more telegrams would be sent, more clever maneuvering with the State Department would be undertaken, not to stop DHMOG from its genocidal partnership with the Third Reich, as it should have been that way. That's what anybody that is humane would have thought this other way instead of the stance that Mr. Watson took. For Watson, it was all about the money. It was all about money. This was just a business venture. He was very callous, obviously, to the needs of, these poor Jews' lives, and the fact that they were just being exterminated like animals, like you would just exterminate an animal. Okay, not to stop. Okay, let me see, and let me read that again, just to lock that thought and this understanding in. Okay, that's why I'm gonna repeat. Sometimes I'm gonna repeat things just so that we hear it again. Okay, more lawyers would be called, more telegrams would be sent, more clever maneuvering. And the reason why I'm reading this again is because I want you to hear the heart of this person who was a technocrat, because we see this same attitude, this same type of endeavor, this same focus being carried out with our technocrats of our time. They're very cold and callous to say, oh, eventually if humanity gets in the way, then humanity is going to become extinct. They will be killed. The robots or the AI will extinct humanity. And, in a very cold and calculating fashion, some of the technocrats, it's Elon Musk that I've heard say that. And I've mentioned this before, but that, to me, that's very disturbing. That's why I repeat it, because it just seems like inhumane. Like there's no prick of the conscience to fight for humanity. So, and we see that same spirit, that same attitude, that same focus, the same callous heart operating in this situation that I'm reading about. In the Bible, I wanted to mention, I'm just reminded of something. It must be the Lord wants me to share this, most likely. In the Bible, it talks about when a person's conscience is seared. It says as if seared with a hot iron. Like let's say for instance, if you make a steak, some people they'll sear the meat, and I think it's so that it holds the juices of the meat inside when they flip it over. It'll hold the juices inside the meat. And the Bible says that sometimes people, like when they're just in really, really sin, in a place of like sin and like a reprobate mind, really bad. And this can happen to anybody. If you're a Christian, you backslide, you become in a state like that where your conscience becomes really callous. And it's called a seared conscience. That's what the Bible says. And that's kind of what the state this man was in. And that's also the state that, like, anybody that is a technocrat that can sit there and say, oh yeah, artificial intelligence, eventually it's going to extinct humanity. There will be no human beings. And they talk about this universal income because they plan on killing us. So that's why they're so fine. They're not thinking, oh yeah, we can really handle, this universal income and giving people all the money that they need and require. I don't really, when I think about it, it makes me wonder if they're not really concerned about that, because they know that their plans are to extinct, to genocide us, or to carry out eugenics upon our society, to kill us off, to genocide us, like they did the Jews, like a Holocaust. So that might be why they think this idea of universal basic income is a good idea, because their plans are that there's not going to be very many human beings around. The small pool of human beings that they have chosen to stay alive, they will enjoy the universal basic income. Ultimately, in the end, after the culling has taken place, that they plan to carry out. Okay, so that's why this man here, more lawyers would be called, more telegrams would be sent, more clever maneuvering with the State Department would be undertaken, not to stop DHMOG from its genocidal partnership with the Third Reich, but to ensure that the proceeds and the profits remained with IBM New York. See, the things that really mattered to them, or to him, to Watson, or to IBM. No matter who won, IBM would prosper. Business was its middle name. Okay.